My dad withheld my $3,000 car fund, unless I cut my girly hair, so I let my aunt take me shopping instead. That was 7 months ago. He's been growing his out ever since and won't speak at family reunions without a hat. Me and my mom are tight, but my dad and I aren't that close. My dad is extremely old-fashioned, and I can't stand a lot of the crap that he says, but he's never pissed me off as bad as he has now. Anyway, with my 2 older siblings, my parents made a deal with them that if they saved half the money for their first cars, then my parents would match their savings and buy them a car. Both my siblings successfully got their first cars that way, and I had always looked forward to getting my first car when I turned 18. Anyway, my family had taken me out to eat for my birthday, and we were having a great time just talking and laughing until I brought up the topic of the car. I had saved almost $3,000 in the past 2 years from my part-time job, and I was pumped. My mom matched my excitement and said she was proud of me for working so hard. But my dad got weirdly silent, and when I turned to him and asked when we would go pick out my car, he said we needed to talk. For context, I have been growing out my hair for the past 2 years. It's very thick and goes past my shoulders. Girls at my school really like it, and I always get compliments. I take care of my long hair as well, and I always make sure it's washed and smells nice. My dad has said plenty of weird things about masculinity before, but until that day, I had zero idea he had any issues with my hair. My dad cleared his throat and said that I wasn't seeing a dime of my car money until I got rid of my girl hair. I laughed at first, thinking he was joking, but it turns out he was dead serious. I told him I loved my hair, and it took forever to grow, and it looked great on me. I told him we had a deal, and I had worked hard towards this goal, and he couldn't just back out over something like this. It seemed like it was the first my mom was hearing about it too, because she backed me up and told my dad my acting was controlling and ridiculous. My dad said the only thing that needed controlling was my feminine side, and if I was old enough to drive, I was old enough to look like a real man. He totally killed the mood of dinner. I just got sad and so shut down, and we all left. When we got home, I just went to my room and tried my best to hold in my tears. I had been so excited for my car, and he had just ripped it away like it was nothing. I considered cutting my hair, but I really didn't want to give to my a-hole father what he wanted. A couple of days went by, and the mood in our house was cold towards my father. Both my siblings and my mom were mad at him on my behalf, but he wasn't budging. He said we were all being dramatic and that someone in the family needed to teach me not to be a sissy. My mom also had a talk with me, where she apologized for my dad's behavior and said she would try her best to pay for half of the car. I told her I didn't want her to pay it all, and that I was hurt, but I didn't want to act entitled. Well, I guess the news of my dad's behavior had started to spread to extended family members, and a few days after my birthday dinner, my favorite aunt called me, and I had no idea how much that call would change my life. My Aunt Rachel was the coolest person in our family, and hearing her voice immediately made me feel a little better. She lived about 3 hours away and ran her own marketing company, but she always made time for her nieces and nephews. "Hey kiddo, I heard about what happened at dinner," she said, and I could hear the anger in her voice. "Your mom filled me in on everything. I cannot believe Mark is pulling this crap." I sat up on my bed, running my fingers through my hair. "Yeah, it's been pretty awful. He won't even look at me unless it's to make some comment about my hair looking girly." "Listen, David, I need you to know something," Rachel said, and her tone got serious. "Your grandfather did the exact same thing to your dad when he was young. Made him cut his hair before he'd pay for his college textbooks. Your dad swore he'd never be like that, but here we are." This was news to me. Dad never talked about Grandpa much, and he died when I was really young. "Really? Dad had long hair?" "Oh yeah, down to his shoulders just like yours. He loved it, but Grandpa threatened to cut him off completely if he didn't get a buzz cut. Your dad caved, and I watched it eat at him for years." She paused, and I heard her take a deep breath. "But you know what? I'm not going to let history repeat itself. I'm coming to visit this weekend, and I'm bringing someone I want you all to meet." The rest of the week crawled by. Dad kept making snide comments whenever he saw me, asking if I needed hair ties or if I wanted to borrow Mom's shampoo. My siblings tried to run interference, but the tension in the house was thick enough to cut with a knife. Mom had started eating dinner in the kitchen while Dad ate alone in the dining room, and none of us kids wanted to pick a side physically, even though we'd all clearly chosen one emotionally. When Saturday rolled around, I was helping Mom prepare lunch when Rachel's Tesla pulled into our driveway, but she wasn't alone. A man stepped out of the passenger side, and my jaw literally dropped. He was wearing an expensive-looking suit, but what caught my attention was his hair. It was dark, shiny, and went all the way down to his waist, tied back in a neat ponytail. "That's James, my business partner," Rachel said as she hugged me at the door. "He's also one of the most successful entrepreneurs I know. Figured your dad might need to see that real men come in all styles." Dad's face when he saw James was something I'll never forget. His mouth opened and closed like a fish, and I could see him trying to process this successful businessman with hair longer than any woman in our family. James shook Dad's hand firmly, and I noticed Dad wince a little at his grip. During lunch, James talked about his latest tech venture that had just secured $10 million in funding. He mentioned his hair exactly once when my sister complimented it. "Thanks. I've been growing it for 12 years. Started when I left the military, actually. Figured I'd earned the right to look however I wanted." Dad barely touched his food, just kept staring at James like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Rachel was clearly enjoying every second of it. About halfway through the meal, she dropped her bombshell. "So, David," she said, turning to me with a smile, "I've been thinking about your car situation. How about this? Next weekend, you and I go car shopping. My treat, no strings attached. Consider it a belated birthday present." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom gasped. My siblings' eyes went wide, and Dad's face turned a shade of red I'd never seen before. "Absolutely not," Dad said, slamming his fork down. "You can't just waltz in here and undermine my parenting, Rachel. This is about teaching him to be a man. Like Grandpa taught you?" Rachel shot back, and Dad flinched like she'd slapped him. "Tell me, Mark, how did it feel when he made you cut your hair? When he held your future hostage over something as trivial as your appearance?" "That was different," Dad muttered, but his voice had lost its edge. "How? How was it different?" "Because from where I'm sitting, you're doing the exact same thing to your son that our father did to you, and we both know how much you resented him for it." Dad stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. "You don't know what you're talking about. I'm trying to prepare him for the real world. People will judge him. He'll lose opportunities." "Like I lost opportunities?" James interjected calmly. "I've built 3 successful companies with this hair. I've presented to Fortune Fortune 500 boards, secured millions in investments, and you know what? Not once has my hair held me back. If anything, it's helped me stand out in a sea of identical suits. Dad glared at him, then at Rachel, then at me. This is my house, and my son, and my rules. Actually, Mom said quietly, and everyone turned to look at her. This is our house, and our son, and I've had enough of this. She stood up too, facing Dad. I've been seeing a therapist, Mark, about our family patterns, about how we keep passing down the same toxic behaviors generation after generation, and it stops now. I'd never seen my parents fight like this in front of company. Dad's face went from red to white, and he looked like Mom had just revealed his deepest secret. Karen, this isn't the time. When is the time, Mark? When David cuts his hair and resents you for the next 20 years like you resented your father? When he stops talking to you altogether? Mom's voice was shaking, but she stood her ground. I found your old photos, the ones from college. You looked so happy with your long hair, and I remember how dead your eyes looked in the wedding photos after your father made you cut it. Dad's shoulders sagged, and for the first time in my life, I saw him look defeated. He slumped back into his chair, putting his head in his hands. I hated him for it, he said quietly. I hated him for years. Promised myself I'd never. He looked up at me, and his eyes were wet. But when I saw you with that hair, all I could think about was how people would treat you, how they'd judge you. I wanted to protect you from that. By becoming the thing you hated, Rachel asked gently. Mark, you're not protecting him. You're projecting your own trauma onto him. The room was silent for a long moment. Then my older brother spoke up. He did the same thing to me, you know. Not with hair, but with my music. Said real men didn't play violin, made me quit and join football instead. My sister nodded. And me with engineering. Said it wasn't ladylike, pushed me toward teaching instead. I looked around the table at my family, all of us carrying these wounds I'd never known about. Dad looked smaller somehow, shrinking under the weight of his own patterns. I need some air, he said finally, and walked out to the back porch. Rachel squeezed my shoulder. Give him time. Realizing you've become what you feared most is never easy. The rest of lunch was subdued. James and Rachel stayed for another hour, and before they left, Rachel pulled me aside. The offer stands, kiddo. Car shopping next weekend if you want, but maybe see if your dad wants to come too, if he's willing to try. After they left, I found Dad still on the porch, staring at the yard. I sat down next to him, not saying anything at first. Your hair does look good, he said eventually. I can see you take care of it. Thanks, I said quietly. I'm sorry, he continued, and the words seemed to physically hurt him. I became my father. The one thing I swore I'd never do, and I did it anyway. You can still fix it, I said. It's not too late. He laughed, but it was bitter. Your mom's therapist has been telling her that for months. Maybe it's time I listened. He turned to me. The car deal stands. Your money, my money, like we promised. Your hair is your choice. I felt relief wash over me, but also something else. Sadness for my dad, for the pain he'd been carrying all these years. Maybe we could go together? To therapy, I mean. Work through this stuff as a family? Dad's eyes widened in surprise, then something softened in his expression. You'd do that? After how I've acted? You're still my dad, I said. And yeah, you've been a real jerk about this, but I don't want us to end up like you and Grandpa. He was quiet for a long moment, then reached over and ruffled my hair, gently, not mockingly. You're a better man than I am, David. Hair and all. We sat there for a while longer, not talking, just being. Mom came out eventually and sat on Dad's other side, taking his hand. My siblings joined us one by one, and we all just sat there on the porch, our family broken, but maybe finally starting to heal. The next morning, Dad knocked on my door. Hey, I was thinking, if you're going car shopping with Rachel, maybe I could tag along. Not to control anything, just to be there, if you want. I smiled. Yeah, Dad, I'd like that. A week later, the three of us went to look at cars. Dad was awkward at first, clearly fighting his instincts to take over, but Rachel kept the mood light. When I found a used Honda Civic that I loved, Dad surprised me. You know, he said, running his hand through his own short hair, I've been thinking about growing mine out a bit. Nothing crazy, just something different. What do you think? Rachel and I exchanged glances, and I grinned. I think that sounds great, Dad. As we drove home in my new car, my hair blowing in the wind from the open window, I caught Dad watching me in the rearview mirror. He wasn't frowning anymore. Instead, there was something like pride in his eyes, mixed with regret and hope. Hey, Dad, I said, thanks for changing your mind, for trying. Thank you, he said quietly, for being patient with your old man, and for having the courage to be yourself, something I never had at your age. It's never too late, I said, echoing what I'd told him on the porch. He smiled, a real smile this time. No, I guess it's not. 6 months later, I picked Dad up from his first solo therapy session. His hair was longer now, not quite to his shoulders, but getting there. It suited him, made him look younger somehow, or maybe just less burdened. How'd it go? I asked as he got in the car. Good, he said. Hard, but good. We talked about Grandpa today, about breaking cycles. As we drove to the barbershop, him for a trim to keep his new style looking good, me for my regular maintenance, he said something that stuck with me. You know what my therapist said? That sometimes the bravest thing we can do is refuse to pass on our pain. That by keeping your hair, by standing your ground, you didn't just save yourself. You saved your future kids from ever having to fight this battle. I glanced over at him. This man who'd spent so long trapped by his own father's ghost, finally learning to be free. We saved each other, Dad. He reached over and squeezed my shoulder. Yeah, son, I think we did. And as we pulled into the barbershop parking lot, two men with different lengths of hair but the same eyes, I realized that sometimes the most unexpected confrontations lead to the most necessary healings. My dad's ultimatum about my hair had indeed led to a family showdown, just not the kind any of us expected. Instead of tearing us apart, it had finally forced us to confront the ghosts we'd all been carrying. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just breaking the cycle and choosing to heal instead. The barbershop visit went smoothly, but the real test came when we got home. My older brother Benjamin was waiting on the front steps, his face grim. He stood up as we pulled into the driveway, and I could tell something was wrong. We need to talk, he said, looking between Dad and me. All of us. Family meeting now. Inside, Mom was already in the living room with my sister Catherine. The atmosphere was tense, different from the healing energy we'd been cultivating. Benjamin paced back and forth while we all took our seats. I got a call from Uncle Jaime today, Benjamin started, and Dad's face immediately darkened. Uncle Jaime was Dad's older brother, someone we rarely saw or talked about. He heard about what happened with David's hair situation, and he's not happy. Dad rubbed his temples. Of course he's not. Jaime never misses a chance to stick his nose in our business. It's more than that, Catherine Catherine interjected. He called me too. Said something about how Dad is corrupting the family values and that someone needs to step in. I felt my stomach drop. Uncle Jaime was even more traditional than Dad had been, the kind of man who thought the 1950s were the pinnacle of society. The few times I'd met him, he'd made comments about my grades being too good for a real man and how I should be focusing on sports instead of academics. What exactly did he say? Mom asked, her voice carefully controlled. Benjamin pulled out his phone and read from a text. He said, and I quote, "If Mark won't raise his son right, then maybe it's time for the family to intervene. That boy needs guidance before it's too late." The room erupted. Dad jumped to his feet, his face flushed with anger. How dare he? After everything we've been working through, he thinks he can just— "There's more," Catherine said quietly. "He's been calling around to other family members. Aunt Catherine, Uncle Benji, even some of the cousins. He's trying to organize some kind of intervention." I felt sick. Just when things were getting better, just when our family was starting to heal, this was happening. What kind of intervention? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. Benjamin and Catherine exchanged looks. He mentioned something about a family camp he knows about, some place that teaches young men how to be properly masculine. The silence that followed was deafening. Dad sank back into his chair, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Mom reached for his hand, and I saw her squeeze it tightly. "Over my dead body," Dad said finally, his voice low and dangerous. "No one is sending my son anywhere." But the damage was already starting. Over the next few days, we started getting calls. Relatives we hadn't heard from in years suddenly had opinions about my appearance. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from cousins, some supportive, but many echoing Uncle Jaime's concerns. The worst part was how it affected Dad. All the progress he'd been making seemed to stall. He became withdrawn, constantly checking his phone, flinching every time it rang. The growing confidence I'd seen in him started to fade, replaced by the old tension. One evening, about a week after Benjamin's revelation, I came home from work to find Dad in the garage, going through old boxes. Photos were scattered across the workbench, family pictures from decades ago. "Hey," I said softly, not wanting to startle him. He looked up, and I saw he'd been crying. "David, I was just looking for something." I moved closer and saw what he was holding. A photo of him and Uncle Jaime as teenagers. They both had long hair, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning at the camera. "We were close once," Dad said, his voice thick, "before Grandpa got to him. Jaime was older, so he got the full treatment first. Military school, the works. When he came back, he was different, harder, and he never forgave me for getting to keep my hair a little longer." I sat down on an old crate beside him. "Is that why you don't talk?" "Among other things." Dad set the photo down carefully. "When I finally did cut my hair for college, Jaime said it was too late, that I'd already been contaminated by liberal ideas. We've barely spoken in 20 years. And now he wants to do to me what was done to him," I said, understanding dawning. Dad nodded. "The cycle just keeps going. I thought I was breaking it, but maybe I was just pausing it." Before I could respond, Mom appeared in the doorway. "Mark? David? You need to come inside. Rachel's on the phone, and it's important." We hurried into the house where Mom had Rachel on speaker. Her usually calm voice was tight with anger. "Jaime called me," she said without preamble. "He's not just talking anymore. He's actually contacted that camp he mentioned, someplace called Iron Foundation. He's trying to get enough family members to chip in for a scholarship for David." "He can't do that," I protested. "I'm 18. He can't just ship me off somewhere." "No, he can't," Rachel agreed. "But he can make your life hell trying. And David, there's something else. He's been digging into the family trust." Dad went very still. "What about the trust?" "Grandpa's will had some antiquated clauses about family members maintaining proper standards to receive their inheritance. Jaime's arguing that by allowing David to keep his hair, you're violating those standards." The trust. I knew about it vaguely. Money Grandpa had left that was supposed to be distributed to the grandchildren when they turned 25. It wasn't life-changing money, but it was substantial enough to matter. "He can't seriously be threatening David's inheritance over his hair," Mom said, incredulous. "He's doing more than threatening," Rachel said. "He's got Aunt Catherine on his side now. She's the co-trustee. If they both agree." Dad slammed his fist on the table, making us all jump. "This is insane. It's just hair." "It was never just about hair," Rachel said quietly. "You know that, Mark. It's about control, about making sure the next generation falls in line." The call ended with Rachel promising to look into our legal options, but the mood in the house was grim. Over the next few days, things escalated quickly. Uncle Jaime started showing up places, at my work, outside my school. He never approached me directly, just watched from a distance, making sure I knew he was there. My coworkers started asking questions. My manager pulled me aside one day, concerned about the family situation, after Jaime had come in asking questions about my work ethic and attitude. "He said he was worried about you," my manager Kathy told me. "Said you might be going through some kind of rebellious phase. I told him you were one of my best employees, but David, what's going on?" I tried to explain without getting too deep into the family drama, but I could see the concern in her eyes. This was affecting more than just my home life now. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I was leaving work late, tired from a long shift, when I found Uncle Jaime waiting by my car. This time, he wasn't keeping his distance. "David," he said, stepping out of the shadows, "we need to talk." My heart was pounding, but I tried to keep my voice steady. "I don't think we do. You're making a mistake, son. This path you're on, it doesn't lead anywhere good." He moved closer, and I could smell cigarette smoke on his clothes. "Your father's lost his way, but it's not too late for you." "My father's finding his way," I shot back. "For the first time in his life, he's actually dealing with his trauma instead of passing it on." Jaime's face darkened. "Trauma? Is that what they're calling discipline now?" "Your grandfather knew what it meant to be a man. He understood that sometimes you have to make hard choices for the good of the family. Like sending you to military school?" The words were out before I could stop them. His hand shot out and grabbed my arm, his grip painfully tight. "You don't know anything about that." "I know it changed you," I said, trying to pull away. "I know you came back different. Dad told me." "Your father was weak," Jaime spat. "Always was. Crying about his hair, acting like it was some great tragedy. At least I learned what real hardship was, what real men go through." "Let go of me." I tried to keep my voice calm, but I was starting to panic. The parking lot was empty, and Jaime was bigger than me, stronger. "Not until you listen. There's a place, a good place, that can help you. 2 weeks, that's all. You go, you learn some discipline, some real values, and when you come back, the trust is yours. No questions asked." I said let go. I yanked my arm hard and stumbled backward, nearly falling. Jaime stepped forward, but suddenly headlights flooded the parking lot. A car pulled up fast, and Dad jumped out, followed by Mom and Benjamin. "Get away from my son," Dad said, his voice deadly quiet. Jaime straightened, a sneer crossing his face. "There he is, my baby brother, coming to save the day. Tell me, Mark, does it make you feel like a big man, letting your son walk around looking like that?" "It makes me feel like a father," Dad replied, moving to stand between Jaime and me. "Something you wouldn't understand. I understand plenty. I understand that our father would be rolling in his grave seeing what you've let this family become." "Good," Dad said simply. Maybe it's time he did some rolling. The standoff lasted another moment before Jaime backed toward his truck. "This isn't over. That boy needs help, and if you won't provide it, the family will." After he drove off, I realized I was shaking. Dad pulled me into a hug, and I didn't even care that we were in a parking lot. "How did you know?" I asked. "Kathy called us," Mom said. "Said Jaime had been hanging around. We came as fast as we could." That night, we had another family meeting. This time, Rachel joined us via video call, and her face was grim. "I've been doing some digging," she said. "That camp Jaime mentioned? It's worse than we thought. There have been complaints, investigations. They use some pretty extreme methods to correct behavior. We're getting a restraining order," Mom announced. "I've already called a lawyer." "That might not be enough," Rachel warned. "Jaime's been building support. He's got Catherine, Benji, and at least 3 cousins convinced that David is in some kind of crisis. He's painting you all as negligent parents, Mark." Dad ran his hands through his growing hair, a gesture I'd noticed he did when stressed. "What do we do?" "We fight back," Rachel said firmly, "but not the way he expects. I've been thinking, what if we flip the script?" Over the next hour, Rachel laid out a plan. It was risky, but it might work. The key was the family reunion coming up in 3 weeks, a gathering that happened every 5 years. Jaime was planning to use it as a platform to rally more family members to his cause, but Rachel had other ideas. "We show them the truth," she said, "about the cycles, about the damage. We bring everything into the light." The preparation began immediately. Dad started reaching out to family members he hadn't spoken to in years, sharing his story. Some were receptive, others hung up on him. Mom worked with Rachel to gather documentation about the camp, building a case for why it was dangerous. My siblings and I had our own role. We started collecting stories from other family members who'd been hurt by the rigid expectations. It turned out there were more than we thought. A cousin who'd been disowned for pursuing art, an aunt who'd been pushed out for divorcing an abusive husband. The pattern went back generations. 2 nights before the reunion, I was in my room working on a presentation when Dad knocked. "Can I come in?" I nodded, and he sat on my bed looking at the laptop screen. "You know you don't have to do this," he said. "Stand up in front of everyone, tell your story." "It's a lot to ask." "I want to," I said. "This is bigger than just my hair. It's about all of us." He was quiet for a moment. "I'm proud of you. I know I've said it before, but the courage you've shown through all this. I couldn't have done it at your age. You're doing it now," I pointed out. "That's what matters." The day of the reunion arrived gray and overcast, matching my mood. The event was being held at a large park pavilion, and cars were already filling the parking lot when we arrived. I saw Uncle Jaime's truck and felt my stomach clench. "Remember," Rachel said, meeting us at the entrance. "We stick together. Don't let him isolate any of you." The first hour was tense but civil. Family members mingled, catching up, carefully avoiding the elephant in the room. I noticed how people's eyes lingered on my hair, some curious, some disapproving. Jaime held court near the food table, surrounded by his supporters. Then it was time. Rachel had arranged for us to have the floor during the traditional family updates portion. As I walked to the front with my parents and siblings, I saw Jaime's face darken with suspicion. "Before we start," Dad said, his voice carrying across the pavilion, "I want to apologize. To all of you, but especially to my children. For years, I carried forward patterns of control and judgment that were passed down to me. I thought I was protecting them, but I was really just perpetuating cycles of pain." The crowd stirred, unsure where this was going. Jaime started to stand, but Aunt Catherine pulled him back down. Dad continued, telling his story, about Grandpa, about his own hair, about the resentment he'd carried. His voice broke when he talked about almost doing the same thing to me, but he pushed through. Then it was my turn. I talked about the car, about the ultimatum, about how it had felt to have my identity tied to my appearance. But I also talked about healing, about the therapy, about how our family was learning to break free from old patterns. "This isn't about rebellion," I said, looking directly at Jaime. "It's about choosing love over control. It's about being the men we want to be, not the men we're told to be." Benjamin spoke next, sharing his story about the violin. Catherine talked about engineering. Other family members started standing up, sharing their own experiences. The dam had broken. Jaime finally couldn't contain himself. He stormed to the front, face red with anger. "This is ridiculous. You're all acting like having standards is some kind of abuse. Our father, our grandfather, they understood what it meant to be strong. They understood what it meant to be afraid," Rachel countered, stepping forward. "Afraid of being different, afraid of being judged, afraid of being real, and they passed that fear down like a curse." "You always were too soft," Jaime snarled at her. "Running off to the city, filling your head with liberal nonsense. Building a successful business," Rachel interrupted. "Living life on my own terms. Being happy. When was the last time you were happy, Jaime?" The question hung in the air. For just a moment, I saw something crack in Jaime's facade, a flash of pain, quickly buried. "This is about that camp," Mom said, stepping forward with a folder. "The one you want to send David to. Do you know what they do there? The methods they use?" She started reading from the reports Rachel had gathered. Isolation, sleep deprivation, physical punishments disguised as character building. Several family members gasped. Even some of Jaime's supporters looked uncomfortable. "That's not—" "I didn't know," Jaime stammered, but Mom wasn't done. "Or did you? Is that what military school was like for you? Is that what you think love looks like?" Jaime's face went white. For the first time since this all started, he looked vulnerable, lost. "It made me strong," he said, but his voice was hollow. "It made you hard," Dad said quietly. "There's a difference." What happened next surprised everyone. Jaime's son, my cousin Benjamin, stood up. He was 16, crew-cut hair, dressed exactly how Jaime liked, the perfect son. "Dad," he said, his voice shaking, "I don't want to be strong like that. I don't want to be afraid all the time." Jaime turned to stare at his son, and I saw his world crumbling. "Benjamin, what are you—" "I hate it, Dad. The constant pressure, the rules, the way you look at me when I don't measure up. I see how you are with David, and it's the same way Grandpa was with you. Can't you see that?" The pavilion was dead silent. Jaime looked around at his family, maybe really seeing them for the first time. His wife had tears in her eyes. His younger son was hiding behind her. Even his supporters were shifting uncomfortably. Jamie's voice cracked. I just wanted to protect you all. From judgment. From pain. You became the pain, Benjamin said quietly. You became the thing you were trying to protect us from. Jamie crumpled. He sank into a chair, head in his hands, and for the first time in my life, I saw my uncle cry. Not the angry tears of frustration, but deep, body-shaking sobs. Dad moved first. He crossed to his brother, knelt beside him, and put a hand on his shoulder. It's not too late, he said. It's never too late to break the cycle. The reunion transformed after that. Instead of the usual surface-level catching up, real conversations started happening. Family members who hadn't spoken in years were reconciling. Stories were shared. Apologies offered. Healing begun. Jamie found me later, as things were winding down. He looked smaller somehow, deflated. I'm sorry, he said simply, for everything. The parking lot, the threats, all of it. I studied him for a moment, then extended my hand. Apology accepted. But you need help, Uncle Jamie. Real help. He nodded, shaking my hand. Benjamin's already looking up therapists. Says he'll go with me if I want. He attempted a smile. Kid's braver than I ever was. Runs in the family, I said. The bravery, I mean. It just shows up different in each generation. As we packed up to leave, I felt a weight I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying start to lift. The threat was over. The family was beginning to heal, and my hair, my beautiful long hair, flowed freely in the evening breeze. In the car on the way home, Dad reached over and squeezed my shoulder. You did good today. We all did. Think it'll stick? I asked. The healing? I don't know, he admitted. But for the first time in my life, I think we've got a real chance. Mom turned around from the front seat. The lawyer called while you were talking to Jamie. He's dropping everything. The trust threats, the camp, all of it. Relief washed over me, but it was tinged with sadness for everything our family had lost to these cycles. All the relationships damaged, the years wasted. Hey, Dad said, catching my expression in the mirror. We can't change the past, but we can choose a different future. That's what you taught me. As we drove home through the gathering dusk, my phone buzzed with messages. Cousins reaching out, wanting to reconnect. Aunts and uncles sharing their own stories. Even Benjamin, asking if I'd teach him about hair care. He was thinking of growing his out. The war for my hair was over, but the battle for our family's soul had just begun. And for the first time in generations, it felt like we might actually win. That night, I sat at my desk, looking at the presentation I'd prepared for the reunion. So much pain, so much history, all tied up in something as simple as how we choose to present ourselves to the world. But maybe that was the point. The small things, hair, music, career choices, they were never really small. They were symbols of autonomy, of the right to be ourselves. My phone rang. It was Rachel. Hey, kiddo, just wanted to check in. How are you feeling? Exhausted, I admitted, but good, really good. You should be proud. What you did today, it was brave. Braver than anything I could have done at your age. I learned from the best, I said, and I could hear her smile through the phone. Get some rest. And David, keep that hair gorgeous. It's not just hair anymore. It's a symbol of every generation's right to choose their own path. After we hung up, I stood in front of my mirror, running my fingers through my hair one more time. Tomorrow, I'd wake up and it would still be there. Long, thick, and completely mine. But more importantly, I'd wake up in a family that was learning to love without conditions, to support without controlling. The cycle had been broken. Now it was time to build something new. The weeks following the reunion were a whirlwind of activity. Benjamin started texting me daily, asking questions about hair products and sending photos of his growing stubble. His excitement was infectious, but it also brought unexpected complications. 3 weeks after the reunion, I was stocking shelves at work when my phone vibrated. Benjamin had sent another message, this time with a photo of his father standing behind him at a barbershop. The caption read, Dad's getting his cut. Says he wants to start fresh. I'm scared, David. I immediately called him during my break. Benjamin answered on the first ring. His voice hushed. He's been acting weird all morning. Kept talking about how Grandpa would want him to set things right. My blood ran cold. I knew that tone, that mindset. Jamie wasn't healing. He was spiraling in the opposite direction. I told Benjamin to stall, to suggest lunch first, anything to buy time. Then I called Dad. He's at Veterans Barbershop on 5th Street, I told him. Benjamin thinks he's about to do something drastic. Dad cursed under his breath. I'll meet you there. Don't go in alone. But by the time I arrived, it was too late. Through the window, I could see Jamie in the chair, the barber running clippers over his head. Not just a trim, a full military buzz cut. Benjamin stood in the corner, looking miserable. I pushed through the door just as the barber finished. Jamie stood up, running his hand over his nearly bald head, and our eyes met in the mirror. His expression was blank, almost mechanical. There, he said, more to himself than to me. Now I look like a real man again, like Grandpa wanted. Uncle Jamie, don't. He turned to face me, and I saw something broken in his eyes. I tried it your way. The feelings, the talking, the weakness. But some of us aren't meant for that. Some of us need structure, discipline. Benjamin stepped forward. Dad, you promised. You said we'd go to therapy together. Change my mind. Jamie pulled out his wallet, paid the barber, then looked at his son. You're next. Can't have you walking around looking soft. Number. Benjamin's voice was quiet, but firm. I'm not cutting my hair. The barbershop went silent. Even the other barbers stopped their work to watch. Jamie's face flushed red, his hands clenching into fists. You're my son. You'll do as you're told. Like you did with Grandpa? Benjamin shot back. How'd that work out for you? Jamie moved fast, grabbing Benjamin's arm. I stepped between them instinctively, and Jamie's other hand shot out, shoving me hard. I stumbled backward into a waiting chair, my shoulder hitting the armrest painfully. Stay out of this, David. This is family business. He is family. Dad's voice came from the doorway. He stood there with Mom and, surprisingly, Rachel, who must have driven down after hearing what was happening. And you need to let go of Benjamin. Now. Jamie's grip tightened. Or what, little brother? You'll give me another speech about feelings? About breaking cycles? He laughed bitterly. I tried that. For 3 weeks I tried. But you know what I realized? Some cycles exist for a reason. Some traditions need to be maintained. The only thing you're maintaining is pain, Rachel said, stepping forward. Jamie, you're hurting your son. Right now. Can't you see that? For a moment, Jamie's grip loosened. Benjamin pulled free, moving quickly to stand behind me. Jamie looked at his empty hand like he didn't recognize it. I'm trying to save him, he said, his voice cracking. From ending up weak. From ending up, he gestured vaguely at all of us. Like this. We're not weak, I said, standing up despite the pain in my shoulder. We're just not afraid anymore. Jamie's face contorted. Not afraid? You think I'm afraid? I survived military school. I built a business. I raised a family. And you're terrified Terrified every single day, Dad interrupted. Terrified of being judged, of being seen as less than, of feeling anything real. I know because I was the same way. You're nothing like me, Jaime spat. I was exactly like you, until David showed me another way. Dad moved closer to his brother. It's not too late, Jaime, but you have to want to change. Really want it, not just go through the motions. Jaime looked around the barbershop, at his son backing away from him, at his brother offering help, at the strangers watching this family drama unfold. His hand went to his newly shorn head, and something seemed to break in him. I can't, he whispered. I don't know how to be anything else. Then learn, Mom said gently. We all had to learn. It's hard and it's messy and sometimes you fail, but it's worth it. Jaime shook his head, backing toward the door. No, I'm done with this. All of it. He looked at Benjamin. You want to grow your hair? Fine. You want to be soft? Fine. But don't come crying to me when the world chews you up. He stormed out, leaving us all standing there in shocked silence. Benjamin's shoulders shook, and I realized he was crying. Without thinking, I pulled him into a hug. It's okay, I said. You did the right thing. He hates me, Benjamin mumbled into my shoulder. He hates himself, Dad corrected gently. And until he deals with that, nothing will change. We left the barbershop together, a strange procession of family members. Benjamin rode with us, too shaken to go home just yet. As we drove, he kept touching his hair, as if reassuring himself it was still there. What do I do now? He asked. Mom's going to freak out when she hears what happened. Your mom already knows, Rachel said, checking her phone. She's been texting me. She's taking your younger brother to her sister's house for a few days. Thinks it might be good for Jaime to have some space to cool down. But Jaime didn't cool down. Over the next few days, he doubled down on his stance. He started posting on social media about the weakness of modern men and the importance of traditional values. He shared articles about military schools and tough love parenting. Each post was like a public rejection of everything we'd tried to build at the reunion. The family group chat exploded. Some relatives who'd been moved by our stories at the reunion started wavering, wondering if Jaime had a point. Others pushed back, sharing their own experiences of growth and healing. The divide was threatening to tear the family apart all over again. Then Benjamin did something unexpected. He started his own social media campaign, posting photos of himself as his hair grew out, each one accompanied by a story. Stories about the pressure he'd felt growing up, about the impossible standards, about watching his father struggle with emotions he wasn't allowed to express. Day 12, one post read, showing his hair starting to curl slightly. Dad used to make me do push-ups whenever I cried, said tears were for weaklings. Now I wonder how many tears he's holding inside. The post went viral within our extended family network. Cousins started sharing their own stories. Aunts and uncles who'd been silent opened up about their experiences. Even some of Jaime's supporters began to question their stance. Jaime responded by showing up at Benjamin's school. I heard about it from Benjamin's panicked text during my lunch break. By the time I got there, the situation had escalated. Jaime was in the principal's office, demanding to withdraw his son, claiming the school was indoctrinating him with liberal nonsense. Benjamin's mom, Patricia, was already there, standing between Jaime and their son. She looked exhausted but determined. You're not taking him anywhere, she said firmly. I've already filed the paperwork. Until you get help, real help, you're not making any decisions about our children. You can't do that, Jaime said, but his voice lacked conviction. I can, and I have. The lawyer says your recent behavior gives me grounds. She pulled out a folder. Harassment of David, the incident at the barbershop, these social media posts. You're spiraling, Jaime, and I won't let you take our boys down with you. Jaime looked at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. You're leaving me? Over this? I'm not leaving you. I'm protecting our children until you remember that they're more important than your pride. Patricia's voice broke slightly. I love you, Jaime, but I won't watch you destroy our family because you can't face your own pain. The principal suggested we take the discussion outside. As we walked to the parking lot, Jaime seemed to deflate with each step. By the time we reached the cars, he looked like a lost child. I don't understand what's happening, he said, looking between all of us. Everything was fine. We had rules. We had structure. When did it all fall apart? It was never fine, Benjamin said quietly. We were just too scared to say anything. Jaime flinched as if he'd been slapped. He looked at his son, really looked at him, and I saw recognition dawn in his eyes. The same fear he'd lived with his whole life was reflected in his child's face. Oh God, he whispered. What have I done? The same thing that was done to you, Dad said, but it's not too late to change it. Jaime shook his head, backing away. Yes, it is. Look at me. Look at what I've become. He gestured to his shaved head, his rigid posture. I'm exactly what Grandpa wanted, and I hate myself for it. Then fight back, I said, surprising myself by speaking up. Not against us. Against the voice in your head that sounds like Grandpa. Against the fear. Against the pain. I don't know how, Jaime admitted, and for the first time it sounded like the truth. Start with therapy, Patricia said. Real therapy, not just going through the motions. Individual and family sessions. It's non-negotiable if you want to be part of our lives. Jaime nodded slowly, looking defeated, but also maybe relieved. Okay, I'll try. Really try this time. As he walked to his truck, Benjamin called out, Dad? Jaime turned, hope flickering in his eyes. I love you, Benjamin said, even when you're being a jerk, but I need you to love me too. The real me, not the version Grandpa would have wanted. Jaime's composure finally cracked completely. He stood there in the school parking lot, tears streaming down his face, nodding wordlessly. Then he got in his truck and drove away. The next few months were messy. Jaime started therapy, but it wasn't a smooth process. He'd make progress, then backslide. He'd have breakthroughs, then panic and retreat into old patterns. But slowly, incrementally, things began to shift. I knew real change was happening when he showed up at my work one day, 6 months after the school incident. His hair had grown out to a short but professional length, and he carried himself differently, less rigid, more natural. I owe you an apology, he said without preamble. A real one. Not just for the parking lot or the threats, but for everything. For trying to force you into a box. For making you a target for my own issues. I set down the box I was unpacking. I appreciate that, Uncle Jaime. I've been thinking about that night at the reunion. What you said about choosing love over control. He paused, struggling with the words. I realized I've never felt loved. Not really. I felt owned, managed, molded, but not loved. That's not true, I said. Benjamin loves you. Patricia loves you. Even Dad loves you in his way. I know that now. Or I'm learning to know it. He pulled out his phone, showing me a photo. It was him and Benjamin at a concert, both of them smiling. Benjamin's hair was past his ears now, and Jaime had his arm around his son's shoulders. We We went to see his favorite band last week. I hate their music, but seeing him happy, that was worth it. Over the following weeks, the family slowly began to knit itself back together. The group chat became less contentious, more supportive. Plans started forming for the next reunion, with ideas for making it a celebration of growth rather than a display of conformity. Dad and Jaime began meeting for coffee every week. Sometimes I'd join them, watching these two brothers learn to know each other for the first time in decades. They'd talk about Grandpa, about the damage done, but also about their hopes for the future. I wasted so much time, Jaime said during one of these meetings. So much energy trying to be someone I'm not. We all did, Dad replied, but we're not wasting it anymore. The real test came at Thanksgiving. The whole family gathered at our house, the first time we'd all been together since the reunion. The atmosphere was tentative at first, everyone careful not to disturb the fragile peace. Then Benjamin walked in with his girlfriend, his hair now touching his shoulders. Jaime tensed for a moment, old instincts flaring. But then he stood up, crossed the room, and hugged his son. "You look good, kid," he said, and meant it. The evening progressed with the kind of easy warmth our family had never really known before. Stories were shared without judgment. Differences were celebrated rather than criticized. When Uncle Benji made a comment about kids these days being too soft, Jaime was the first to speak up. "Maybe soft isn't the worst thing to be," he said. "Maybe it takes more strength to be vulnerable than to be hard." As we cleared the dishes, Mom pulled me aside. "You started all this, you know, by refusing to cut your hair, by standing your ground." "I just wanted my car," I said, but we both knew it had become about so much more. "Well, you got your car, and your family got its soul back." She kissed my forehead. "I'm proud of you." Later that evening, I found myself on the back porch with Dad, Jaime, and Benjamin. 4 generations of men who'd fought the same battle in different ways. My hair blew in the cool November breeze, longer than ever. Benjamin absently played with his own growing locks. Dad's hair had settled into a comfortable medium length. Even Jaime had let his grow out enough to style. "You know what's funny?" Jaime said, breaking the comfortable silence. "I can't even remember why I thought it mattered so much. Hair length determining manhood? It sounds insane now." "It was never about the hair," I said. "It was about control, about fear, about trying to fit into boxes that were built by people who were just as scared as we were." "When did you get so wise?" Dad asked, ruffling my hair like he used to when I was little. "I had good teachers," I said, eventually. As the evening wound down and people started leaving, Benjamin pulled me aside. "Thank you," he said simply, "for showing me it was okay to be myself." "You always knew," I said. "You just needed permission to act on it." The family gathered in the driveway for goodbyes, a ritual that now included genuine hugs and promises to stay in touch. Jaime was the last to leave, lingering by his truck. "David," he called out as I headed back inside, "that car of yours, you taking good care of it?" "Yeah," I said, confused by the question. He nodded, seeming to wrestle with something. Then he pulled out an envelope. "This is from the trust, your portion." Turns out those proper standards clauses weren't as ironclad as I thought, or maybe I just finally understood what proper standards actually means. I took the envelope, stunned. "Uncle Jaime, you earned it," he said firmly. "Not by cutting your hair or conforming or being who anyone else wanted you to be. You earned it by being exactly who you are, by showing the rest of us that was even possible." As his truck disappeared down the street, I stood there holding the envelope, my hair whipping around my face in the wind. Inside, my family was laughing, the sound spilling out through the windows into the night. I thought about where we'd been a year ago, fractured, rigid, bound by invisible rules that no one had ever questioned. Now we were something else entirely. Not perfect, but real. Not without problems, but willing to face them together. My phone buzzed. A text from Benjamin with a photo of him and his dad at home, both of them with their longer hair, both of them smiling. The caption read, "Thanks for showing us the way." I typed back, "We all found it together." And that was the truth of it. My dad's ultimatum about my hair had led to exactly what he'd feared, a complete upheaval of our family's traditional dynamics. But instead of destruction, we'd found reconstruction. Instead of chaos, we'd discovered authenticity. As I walked back inside to rejoin my family, I realized that sometimes the greatest act of rebellion isn't about tearing things down. Sometimes it's about refusing to perpetuate pain, choosing growth over stagnation, and having the courage to be exactly who you are. My hair was still long, longer than ever actually, but that had stopped being the point a long time ago. The point was that I'd chosen it, and in making that choice, I'd somehow given everyone else permission to make their own. The cycle hadn't just been broken, it had been transformed into something new, a family legacy of authenticity, acceptance, and the radical act of choosing love over fear. And that was the inheritance worth passing on.